guess who started VidCon? VidCon, if that rings a bell for all of you interested in YouTuber culture. But The Fault in Our Stars wasn't really my jam. However, an absolutely remarkable thing, just amazing, just, I don't know, it's exciting, in depth. There's a bit of a sci-fi element to it, but there's also a bigger social commentary on virality, sort of how social media impacts fame, radicalization. It is actually very relevant for the previous year, even though it was written earlier. And so basically, there's this girl, April May, and she discovers this giant sculpture, and she ends up being the first person to witness it and document it, even though they pop up all around the world. And it basically follows all the chaos that ensues with that. And I really loved how the book was very fleshed out, because I could really imagine if this crazy weird thing did happen, this is how it might look like, because he talked about what was happening in other countries and politics, as well as in April's world and social media. So I really liked how it was very accurate, and I do think that Hank's YouTube lived experiences have been very helpful in writing this book, and it gets really wild towards the end. I was just reading it and I was like, what? Yes, and from memory it does end on a cliffhanger, and it's a series. I have not read the second one, but I will. I've got to reserve it from my local library. Most of the books that I purchase are non-fiction, just because I like to highlight them. But otherwise, I mostly get things from my library. Okay, now the next one is called Finish. Give Yourself the Gift of Done by John Acuff. Now, if you are looking to have a bit of a reset, do some goal planning, you feel that all the things you've tried in the past haven't really worked, and you kind of want to find something fresh and new and engaging, as a human, and don't we all want to be more satisfied with our lives? So essentially it's all about being less distracted, more focused, and I loved how it was full of actionable, practical tips, some that I had heard before, some that I had not, but I just loved how it all made sense and it all was linked together. I mean, his tip on how he schedules his day, I basically still use that. That was very helpful for me. So if you are a student, entrepreneur, or working from home, anything like that, I would highly recommend the book. And again, it's one that I wrote copious notes on that I need to review because I need to actually action all of the things that he suggested. He does. I did read his previous book, which wasn't so good. What was it called? Oh, sorry, I'm having a mind blank. Oh, it's called So Good They Can't Ignore You. Why Skills Trump Passion. Anyway, that book wasn't as good. And what I will say with him, just something to be aware of, when he gives examples of things, they are very male dominated, and that was the same in this book, and and just in general, I didn't always like the examples he gave for the concepts, though some were fine, but I did notice, particularly with the previous book, most of the good examples of what to do, they were like 90% male, but then it was disproportionate. There was more women in the bad examples. So, I like to think he's a bit more aware of things like that now because the books, they're a few years old. But I don't know, I just thought it was an interesting thing of note. So, that's a great one. I think especially now because we're all working from home, aren't we? So, and the next one. Oh, I have a lot of notes on this one. So, this one is Invisible Women. Invisible Women. Yeah. I'm probably gonna mess up my fairy lights. They're all very delicately placed. That was a miracle that did not just spring off. There, that's better. Invisible Women, Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men by Caroline Criado Perez. Now, this is not a book that you're gonna read all in one sitting. Mine is literally full of highlights. To be fair, the book, it's not actually as long as this because she's got a lot of references. It is very data, statistics heavy, which I love, along with her analysis. So, the basic idea of the book is that the world is designed and built by and for men, and with that comes data bias, and she discusses how that disadvantages women, and as well as lots of ways that these issues can be resolved, which ultimately benefits everyone. And like I said, it's full of data and statistics, but it is so interesting, fascinating. Everyone will learn something from this book, and unlike other feminism books, is that men and women have physiological differences beyond just our junk. So for example, women have, on average, they have smaller hands, but also we have less grip strength. I believe it is, yes, 41% less grip strength than men. So an 80-year-old man is I'm incorrect. this one is great as well, and I read it last year. So, I mean, I have sort of yo-yo dieted, my weight has gone up and down over the years, and anyway, it is so nice to have something that you can reference and rely on and not have to worry about any gimmicks. And at the end of the day, it's all from a health standpoint. There is no like gimmicks in there that are bad for you. You know, there's some tricks you could say, like he talks about how it's better to eat earlier in the day, but it's also healthier for us. Like, our bodies were designed for us to eat earlier in the day. So even if you have no desire to lose weight or anything like that, I still think from a health standpoint it is so good. I mean, it is just packed full of information. There is 5,000 citations throughout the book. Like crazy. He's got a QR code at the back of the book so that you can see all of the references online, because they don't fit in the book. Now, it is a bit of a beast. It is like 500-600 pages, so I'm sure you could find a summary online, but FOMO, I don't want to feel like I'm missing out. So Dr. Gregor, he is behind the website nutritionfacts.org, which is a non-commercial, science-based public service, and it is run on donations. It's a registered not-for-profit charity. Did you know? This is why you can trust this book. One, because it's full of all these references. He has a team of researchers that go through hundreds of journal articles each week with him, and so they are basically looking at all the latest research and compiling it into books. And he doesn't make any proceeds from this book. All of it goes to charity. society, and women particularly our mental health is being messed up by kind of this societal pressure on appearances. And so the author is a psychology professor, and whilst I do love sort of memoirs and things like that that may be on body image, this one is great because, you know, she's educated, again, based on research. I'm sure you're seeing a theme here with all of my stuff. But some of the, I mean, again, the book that I highlighted a lot of, and, you know, it just made me think so differently about appearances and things like that. I mean, I'm no saint, I don't have all the answers, but, you know, some of the main takeaways from the book that I garnered were that by focusing more on our appearance, by prioritizing it, by talking about it, things like that, we actually feel worse about our appearance. People may think, oh, if you spend more time and discussing it or working on your appearance and things like that, then it would be the opposite, but it can actually be really detrimental. She talks about the idea of self-objectification. It's basically viewing your body like an ornament, like a decoration, as opposed to a functional, living, breathing, thinking human being. And the other little sort of takeaway nugget that I always think about is that she said she found that when people were complimented on their appearance, they actually ended up being more self-conscious about it. So basically, if you're going to compliment someone, try not to compliment on their appearance, because yes, sort of in the moment we may, like, sort of both parties may think, oh, that was nice, but it actually makes people think, sort of focus on their appearance more, and perhaps feel like they always have to do that thing, look that way, so that they get a compliment from you. And a lot of it is sort of subconscious things, but what they would do lots of different studies, and they would have someone like compliment another person, and without them sort of being aware that it was all part of the experiment, and then with the participant, then later on they would ask them questions about body image and things like that. So yeah, very, very fascinating. Recommend. Well, obviously I recommend all of these books. I wouldn't be talking about them, but I did read it when I was going through a bit of a dark time this year, and I was like, I'm not feeling great, I've got to do something productive. How can I get out of this funk? So, you know, I go to books. Alright, now the last book. I have so much love for this book, and I sort of rediscovered it again when I was planning this video. So, if you have seen my lo-fi book tour for last year, I did mention this book. So, Brazen Rebel, Ladies Who Rocked the World. This is the graphic novel I've been talking about. It is just luck that I came across it. I saw it in a bookstore at a university, and let me see if I can show you a page with one of the bigger pictures. So it's full of sort of little comics, and I love it. All the comics, all the color schemes are different. It's really gorgeous. This is the picture. I mean, look, this is my style of illustration. I wish I had prints of all of these pictures. Look at that. This is the one about Mae Jemison. She was the first black woman in space. So it's basically full of short little comic stories. They're about 5 or so pages long each one, detailing some epic woman. And I mean, the book, it spans continents, centuries. It's really diverse, inclusive, women of all shapes and sizes. It is amazing, and I swear every single story you're gonna want to go and research the woman afterwards, because most of them, about 95%, I hadn't actually heard of. And but you know, maybe you're more enlightened than me. Now, in my lo-fi book tour from the last year, I incorrectly said that one of the stories was about Margaret Thatcher. No, that is incorrect. It was about Margaret Hamilton, who plays the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz. And I think that's about the first or the second story in this book. But anyway, it's amazing. I had no idea that this crazy stuff happened to her. She is a trooper. And also it's weird that I've never heard this story, because I remember growing up